It's going to be just what it is.
All right, we're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome. I am so happy and honored to be able to bring on my friend Jackie Simmons. And just the fact that I get to call you my friend is like such a blessing. I met Jackie in October. Was it? No. Was it in October? Yeah. It feels like it's been a lifetime. It has not.
In Nashville. I
We
mean, we
went to
were
Nashville.
in Nashville.
We were at a business event together, and Jackie just changed my life. She just casually like noticed something was wrong and was like, "I can fix that," and she did. So I highly recommend her workshop on the 4 flavors of emotional energy. It is incredible and remarkably practical. And
Oh,
the topic today is stop arguing with reality, which is something we all definitely need to learn how to do. So I can't wait to hear more about that. Welcome, Jackie.
oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you. And Carolyn, it's just delightful to see you again. So our lives get changed no matter who we meet. At least that's my experience. So my life got changed meeting you as well. It was not a one-way street here. Where do you want to go? If we could do one thing that the people who follow you would most want, what do you want them to take away? Because when it comes to arguing with reality, I'm an expert.
So you sent this title of Beyond Choice Theory, and I don't really know what that means.
Aha. There we go. All right. So if you don't really know what it means, it's probable that there are a lot of people who don't know. Choice theory is what was created by the psychiatrist Michael Diamond. And he came up with this theory that people struggling with psychosis were really struggling with not recognizing where they had choices. And I read that book many, many years ago. It doesn't apply everywhere, but where I realized it applied was in my mission. And I'm the co-founder, I'm one of the co-founders, and I'm the director of the Teen Suicide Prevention Society. And we publish a book called Make It a Great Day. The choice is yours. And it is the power to choose. What most people don't know is that you can choose your version of reality. You can choose what things mean, but there's a catch.
Why is there always a catch?
Well, this has to do with the way your brain really works. We assign meanings, what things mean. We decide who we are and how the world works and who we can be in the world. We make a lot of those decisions with part of our brain missing.
Hmm.
We make those decisions before we're 7 years old.
Oh my.
And our prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that can reason and rationalize and has perspective and can, oh my goodness, it does so many things for us, isn't fully developed physically until we're 12 and isn't completely online until we're 24 or more.
Ooh, goodness.
So, with part of our brain missing, we've already made the decision about who we are, how the world works, and who we can be in the world.
Hmm.
And then we spend the rest of our lives arguing with reality because those decisions and those meanings may not match up with what we're living. And we have what is known as cognitive dissonance.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So most of us live in this place of discomfort. They say, oh, you have a comfort zone. And I'm like, for most of it, it's a discomfort zone.
But we're happy in our discomfort. It's familiar.
It's familiar. Here's my
Oh,
definition of your comfort zone. You ready?
okay.
Your comfort zone, that place where life is just good enough that you're not hungry
Mm.
and just bad enough that you're not happy. And
That
that's
is
where
very
most people live. That's where most people live out their lives. They live out their lives in the land of good enough. And good enough really is good enough until you decide that you are ready for something different, something better, perhaps, something more comfortable, something with a higher level of affluence and abundance and prosperity and positivity and all of these great words. And that's wonderful, except that when you go to take an action towards that and it doesn't fit that model of who you are, how the world works, and who you can be in the world, there's going to be conflict internally. We call this stress, anxiety, overwhelm, self sabotage, procrastination. In case you're wondering why you're not doing the things that you know in your head would move you forward towards your dreams, it's because you've got this disconnect between what you want and what you think you deserve, who you think you can be in the world. Really is just what you think you deserve to have in this life. That's where I play, as you know. I mean, this is my playground. What if you could have control over those meanings? If you could permanently erase any emotional trauma that created a limiting belief about who you could be? Wouldn't that be fun? And once I started doing that for myself, because I studied with a lot of people because I was a hot mess. And for anybody who doesn't know my story, I'm not just the director of the Teen Suicide Prevention Society. I raised a child who was suicidal. And she's really amazing. She survived 14 suicide attempts.
Oh my goodness.
And I don't get credit for the fact that she's still alive. She did it. She got intervention for it. Me, I was running scared, thinking that if I brought up the topic, I could put the thought back in her head. The depths of denial. Let me tell you, this is a really deep river. And I tried swimming in it for several decades. This is why I do what I do now. I mean, what if you started challenging the mythology? I mean, now I know you can't put a thought in somebody's head. How do I know? I've done hundreds, actually thousands of talks that save lives, and I teach other people to have the talk that saves lives. And the reality is, oh my God, you got kids, Carolyn.
Right? I sure do. Yes.
Come on, everybody. If we could put a thought in our kids' head, their rooms would be clean. So we have proof you can't put a thought in their head, but the mythology of that is very embedded.
People who have suicidal ideation, it's you bringing it up isn't what causes it to be there. It's already there. They're still wrestling with it. I've been in that place before. I had perinatal depression, so similar to postpartum, but while pregnant, and yeah, suicidal thoughts and impulses.
The worst part about it is that Hollywood got the message before the rest of us did. And they made movies. The Seventh Seal is actually about suicide ideation in a woman who's pregnant.
Oh.
Yeah. And yet they couched it in all of this mystical stuff. But most
it's a scary topic.
Yeah. Many. Suicidal ideation, suicidal thinking. Okay. Ideation is when you get stuck in a thought. Suicidal thinking in and of itself is normal. According to Sigmund Freud, it's part of our natural worst case scenario problem solving. You've heard of worst case scenario, right? What's the worst case scenario? Well, my friend Frank King, he made this into a livelihood. He's actually known as the mental health comedian. And he explains what living with suicidal ideation is like. And as he says, you know, my car breaks down. I got three choices: repair it, replace it, or kill myself. It's always on the table for someone who struggles with suicidal thinking. And what we realized at the Teen Suicide Prevention Society is that all of us have an inner 2-year-old. And if you have you ever tried to take a cell phone away from a 2-year-old?
I have.
Or any toy? So most suicide prevention programs are really intervention programs, and they kick in when somebody's deemed to be at risk. And the first thing they do is try to get someone to write a safety contract, AKA, they want to take the option of self harm and suicide off the table. We believe that's asking for trouble. Because one thing I know about teenagers, I've raised my own and I was one, teenagers will lie. And the minute you try it, so one, they're going to tell you, yes, I agreed to a safety contract. Two, it's not going to be true because they're going to lie. And three, the minute you ask them to commit to a safety contract, what are you doing? Trying to take suicide off the table. What happens when you try to take a cell phone away from a 2-year-old? It makes the problem worse, guys, but I didn't know that. For many years, I didn't know that. It wasn't until my daughter Stephanie actually publicly broke the silence on her multiple suicide attempts. And we actually had a conversation about it, which she was always, I think, always willing, but certainly in the last few years, very willing. And I wasn't. And it wasn't until I got asked to take a TEDx stage, not just offered, but asked on this topic. And I'm like, I ain't talking about this in public. Are you kidding? I was raised where you don't air your dirty laundry in public. And there's not a lot dirtier than suicidal thinking and mental health and my own.
Especially in your child. Yeah.
Well, yeah, we got the whole parent, anybody who struggles with parent guilt. I feel your pain and there are ways out. And that's what I focus on now. How to raise a child without feeling like you did it wrong. That, yeah, I could write, that could be my next TEDx talk, actually.
Yeah, that'll be a good one. Definitely.
All right, here's my rule. Parenthood is the only job in the world that you have to wait 21 years to know whether or not you did a good job. And even then, you're not sure.
Those performance reviews are really few and far between.
Yeah, and you know, so this is my goal in the world. Let's stop taking this into the habitual places of the past. Let's stop making it mean something about us and start getting curious, because curiosity did not kill the cat. Curiosity is the evolved part of our brain. It's the higher functioning part of our brain. It did not exist in the caveman day. And I got a whole teaching about this called The Story of Stress. And my guy, your guy, our common ancestor, Og, the caveman. Because here's the deal. Og walks out of his cave in the morning, sees a shaking bush, boom, he's back in the cave. He didn't have to think about it. He didn't have, you know, because his brain was programmed to what's wrong, what's wrong, what's wrong. Always scanning. By the way, everybody's brain has that part in the limbic. It's called your natural negative bias. We all have it. So don't stop judging people who are negative Nellies or whatever you call them, negative Nelsons. Stop judging them. All they're doing is showing you what you already know about you. You've got the same natural negative bias. We all do. And here's why it's important and you don't want to get rid of it. See, Og didn't have to think. He just fight or flight, big muscles, back in the cave. Why? Well, last week, Og's friend Larry got a little too close to a shaken bush and got eaten by the tiger, which means that we are not descendant of Larry. Why? Because he didn't live long enough to pass on his genes. Og, who didn't think, didn't have any curiosity, his brain was totally limbic, totally reactive. He survived, and we all are descendants of Og, not Larry. Fast forward to today. We need a little Larry. We need the ability to be curious rather than critical, to be curious rather than concerned, to be curious rather than anything that has a lower vibration of your energy. What would happen if you were willing to be curious? Curiosity, by the way, is asking just a different question. Like, what would it look like if this worked out? all of a sudden your brain, you've activated it to create a mental model, which is where everything starts. You've activated it to create a mental model of what your life could be like if this worked out, what your business could be like if this worked out. By the way, when I asked that question, what would this look like if it worked out about my certification program? I went immediately into overwhelm because I forgot a critical piece. When you have more success, you also have the resources to solve the problems that come with more success.
Okay.
And that's a really critical piece. Thank you to one of my mentors, Iman, a guy who pointed this out to me. He's like, Jackie, you're in overwhelm, one, over something that didn't happen and now. And two, when you have 100 students a month coming into your certification program, you will have the resources that come with 100 students a month to be able to hire the experts and the help to handle and solve. So you don't have to do that. And you just get to show
That
up.
is a really good point. That's something that I get stuck in a lot, is that future thinking and overwhelm and the self-sabotage of, but what if it's really successful and then I have to deliver and there's all these people and I don't have enough hours in the day and I better not do anything at all.
Welcome to the entrepreneurial dilemma. Your brain gets hijacked by the limbic. Why? Remember the comfort zone. Good enough that you're not hungry, bad enough that you're not happy, and everything that you want that you don't already have exists where? Outside your comfort zone. If it was inside your comfort zone, you'd already have it. So you're going to be what? Uncomfortable. The meaning you assign to being uncomfortable depends on your handle on your whole brain. Because
That's true, because you could take it as a sign, like, oh, I guess this isn't meant to be.
most people do. Most people go, oh, this is a sign that I'm not supposed to go this way because it's uncomfortable. Guess what? If it was comfortable, it's not going to create what? Change. Change is uncomfortable by definition for two reasons. One, it's outside your comfort zone. That's the first one. But here's the real reason why change is uncomfortable. I call this the crab effect. Do you know the story of the crabs? Have you ever been crabbing?
I live in Maryland, but I have to admit that no, I have not.
Well, I used to live in Maryland, but I learned crabbing on the banks of the Neuse River in North Carolina. You need brackish water to go crabbing, okay? Brackish water means, this is where the ocean with the salt water meets the rivers and the bay. Okay, so you get this mix. Now, there are two ways to go crabbing. On the Neuse River, you went crabbing in the middle of the night because the crabs would start coming in and everybody in the campground was waking everybody up. Why? Because after the crabs came in, the flounder came in. And so you just took a gig and you went out and you got as much food as you wanted because it was plentiful. But now you go a little further north, you get into Maryland, they crab a little differently. What do? They take chicken necks and you go out on a pier during the day. Again, it's got to be in brackish water because that's where the crabs are. But what you do is you tie a chicken neck on a piece of rope, think almost like clothesline cord, something heavy. And you toss it out into the water and you tie the other end to the dock and you throw out 6 or 8 of these things. And then you could sit around and talk. Now, with my dad, that meant drink beer. That's a whole nother story. So you sit around, you're chatting, and all of a sudden, one of these cords will start going, bink, 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 bink. So you reach down and you start pulling it in really slowly. And when you could look down and see the crab, you reach down, you grab this long handle pole net, and you scoop up the crab, you put it in a bucket, you put the lid on the bucket right away. Because those crabs are fast. They'll climb out and scuttle away, and you're not going to catch one on land. They are really bad. And then you throw the chicken neck back out. Now, you had to pull it in slowly because you don't want the crab to let go of it. Yeah. After a while, you're chit-chatting, etc. And then another one. Bing, bing, bing. pull it in really slowly. And when you can see the crab, you reach down, grab that long handle pole net, and you pick it up, you put it in the bucket with the other one. And you don't have to put the lid on the bucket anymore, Carolyn.
Really?
Because it doesn't matter which crab starts climbing up, the other one's going to pull it back down to keep it safe. And this is what we do with each other every single day. One person in a family starts to change. Everybody else in the family sends a message, change back. One person decides to go to college when nobody's ever gone to college. They decide to be an entrepreneur when nobody else has ever been an entrepreneur. They do something outside of the firelight circle of the caveman brain. What are they doing? Same thing the crab is doing, climbing up. They're going somewhere that is unfamiliar. And what do our families do out of love to keep us safe? Same thing that other crab does. Yeah. Pull us back down. Pull us back down. And they don't do it to be mean. They don't do it because they don't believe in you. They do it because they're hardwired in the Og caveman brain to believe that if I let you go out there and do something that nobody else has ever done in our family, you are going to die. I'm not going to let that happen to you. Why don't you just go get a job? By the way, every entrepreneur in the world has heard that from a family member, but most of us didn't understand that this was love. They were scared we were going to die. They just didn't even have the language for that because it was occurring in the emotional brain, which is pre-language. So now that we know you got crabs in your life, sorry, everybody's got a case of crabs. You didn't know you signed up for that because you're here.
I thought crabs were caught the same way lobsters are. I had no idea.
Oh, there's a lot of ways to catch a crab. The beautiful thing, though, is what we can learn from them. And what we can learn from them is that the need to keep each other within the firelight, to keep each other in the environment that's familiar, even if it's deadly. Because let's face it, crabs in a bucket, that's a deadly environment for a crab. Even if it's deadly, even if you are in an environment that is really not necessarily conducive to long-term living, trying to get out of it will trigger the same response in the brain of everybody who cares about you. Stay here where it's safe, meaning familiar. Stay here where it's familiar, even if it's deadly. They played this really well in a really old movie, old by most people's standards. It's called The Poseidon Adventure, where people were following the doctor, one group of people, and they were going towards the bridge of the ship. There was only one problem. The ship was upside down, so they were going deeper and deeper into the water. Why? Because in their minds, the bridge is where the captain is, and that's the person who's going to help him. And the small band of people who went the other way are the only ones who survived.
Wow.
And speaking of survival, it sounds like there's a survival issue going on right now.
A little battle happening. Come here, sweetie.
Hey, we understand these things, Carolyn. Hey, I recognize you. Is your name Trouble?
Right here.
No? Are you sure your name's not Trouble? All right. So here's the deal. What she's doing is exactly what our brains do. It's if you ignore me. By the way, for kids, this is visceral. Oh my goodness, an apple.
I have it.
You have an apple.
You have an apple.
I'm showing you a bite of my apple.
I'm glad you're showing it to us. Is it okay if I talk about you for a minute?
Yes.
Okay. I'm glad I have your permission. By the way, permission is key, guys. Quit trying to help people without their permission. Please ask them first.
Excellent side note.
It's a lesson that was really painful for me to learn. Oh, and by the way, Carolyn, now I tell my kids, you don't pay me enough to help you solve that problem. I have faith you can figure it out on your own. This is freedom from parental guilt, by the way. Yeah. There's something in the human design, there's human design, there's emotional intelligence, there's all of these worlds that I play in now. In the emotional intelligence world, I understand now something called corrective complex, which is when somebody around me, especially if they're related to me, expresses something that I either disagree with or know, based on my experience, is going to take them in a direction they really don't want to go. My knee-jerk reaction to fix, course correct, share, educate, however politely we parse it, they have a name for it. It's called corrective complex. And what it does, pisses everybody off and gives everybody a complex. So
I think this is my. Have you ever seen that XKCD cartoon? They do stick figure drawings, and there's somebody, he's like on the computer, and his partner is like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "I can't come to bed yet. Somebody's wrong on the internet." My husband says that to me all the time. I have such a hard time like walking past.
So realize you're just being hijacked by something called corrective complex. What is it like? The crabs in the bucket. Your limbic brain, your survival brain says that if I don't course correct them, they're going to die. Just so you'll know, it is that emotionally important to you.
I better hurry. I better hurry.
Okay, I think Nana's here. Oh my goodness.
Grandma.
We have a very professional podcast around here.
Jim Dandy to the rescue. We call that grandma, right? So grandma's here. Now they are distracted. We're happy. The reality is corrective complex is this everywhere. Everywhere. And all it is our desire, misplaced as it might be, to prevent someone from dying because our limbic brain reacts to it that strongly. The reality is, does it matter? 99 times out of 100? No, not really. So here's my solution.
I was about to ask.
Are they paying me? Period. This is what, this is the application of what I teach is the ballpark theory. My ballpark, are they a ball player in my ballpark? Meaning, are they one of my students, one of my clients, which means they're paying me. If they are one of my students, one of my clients, and they're paying me, then I have permission to course correct because they paid me. If they're not paying me and I see they're about to go off the rails, I can decide. 10 is they're going to die. So if they're going to die, I'm going to bump them off the railroad track before they get hit by a train. I do mean literally die. Okay. That's the only place where this doesn't apply. Anything other than 10, they could lose their business. I'm going to ask, is this something you want help with? Because I could see where it could have an impact of you losing your business. So I will ask, is this something you want help with? Because I can see where it can have the impact of you losing your business. That often gets people's attention enough to go, what'd you see? And then I will just tell them.
Asking is a big key. I like that. It's not that you just ignore it. It's not that you go, oh, well, I guess I'll just let you fail, but that you ask for permission to continue that conversation about it.
If you can spot it, it is now your responsibility to respond to it respectfully. And it is that respectfulness that went missing. Most of my life, what I was raised with growing up, and it's not my family's fault. Okay. This is not about finding fault with your family of origin. Here's the deal. How do we know it's not their fault? My mama was a teacher. My daddy was a drill sergeant. His daddy was a preacher. I had somebody who their profession was to tell me what to think, what to do, and what to believe from the moment I was born. Sorry, that's my
Heard
southern
that
tone.
southern accent there.
Yeah. Well, I channel my grandpa sometimes, I think. And Carolyn, if that was all it was, that would have been enough. Don't you agree?
Yeah, definitely.
Are you ready for the kicker?
I'm ready.
I have 3 older sisters,
Oh my gosh.
and they are all Virgo. Now, I don't know a lot about the zodiac. All I know is that if all 3 of them are one sun sign, and I'm not that sun sign, I'm actually a Gemini, which means I have a lot more energy than they do by definition, because I've got the energy of 2 people or 6, depending, because somebody told me I'm a triple Gemini, and I'm like, oh, that explains a lot.
That does explain a lot. That's what I was going to say.
And so when you're out of step with your family out of all love wants to pull you into step with them. It doesn't make them wrong, and it doesn't make you wrong. It just means that both of you are going to have comfort zones that have to stretch. And when you start stretching, imagine you're connected to your family with a rubber band. When you start stretching your comfort zone, what happens? They get more uncomfortable, right? Because that rubber band is starting to pull them. When you understand that that's all that's happening, then you can take a deep breath. You can be a little bit patient, and you can say, yeah, I get that you're not comfortable with this yet. Give me the grace of a little bit of time to see how it works out. I know, trust me, I've thought it through. They may not trust you, and they may not believe you, and they may beat that crap out of you to get you to what? Change back. And it's okay if they do. Once you understand that's just them wearing a crab suit. That's just them as a crab. And we've all been a crab for somebody else. So it's not like any of us have gotten to this, whatever age anybody is who's listening to this. Not one of us has gotten here without being crabbish with somebody else. So be a little bit forgiving, a little bit tolerant of the crabs around you. Oh, and by the way, I've got a great line. Are you ready?
Oh, yes.
Oh, first, preamble. Have you ever had a book create a relationship with you from across a room?
I don't know. I could see how that could happen, but I don't recall it happening to me.
I was in Kmart back in the day. Shows you how old I am. And I'm over here picking through the clearance rack, because that was my thing. I was a single mom raising 3 kids. So I picked through the clearance rack a lot in every store. And I look up and I saw this big red no on the front of a book. I mean, it was like being pulled magnetically. So I go over to this book rack that was right near the cash register, and the full title of the book was When I Say No, I Feel Guilty. And I was like, okay, somebody's been like reading my mind. I had to find out what it was. It was an assertiveness training book, not airy-fairy, not wishy-washy. It was from the 60s or 70s. Been around a long time. When I say no, I feel guilty. And it was all about how do you break out of that mindset so that you can say no to what you don't want and say yes to what you do want without what? Feeling guilty. It's taken me years. And it took me until I wrote the chapter, and then there were elephants, to be able to explain it my way in the last volume of Make It a Great Day. The choice is yours. Yeah. And by the way, that book, Make It a Great Day, The Choice is Yours, is the book that supports the mission of the Teen Suicide Prevention Society. And that's where you can find my version of this. The reality is that most of us feel guilty when we say no, because we were taught to feel guilty when we say no.
Is this Daddy's room?
And on this journey, if we don't learn to say no to what we don't want, it makes it impossible to have the time, talent, and treasure to say yes to what we do want. And when we say yes to what we do want, we just need to be graceful and accepting that the people who love us are going to tell us to change back. They're going to be crabbish. It's okay. If you decide it's okay, it's okay. And then you can be patient with them. You can say, I hear you.
And that's part of not fighting with reality, because you don't have to make them change to be more like you. You don't have to force them to understand what you're trying to do, but have that patience, let them be who they are. Stop fighting it.
Here's the one sentence from that book that has saved my life, saved my assets, and made it possible for me to be in a lot of relationships with my family that I might not have stayed in otherwise. When someone sends a change back message, Jackie, it would make more sense if you got a real job. And the sentence is, you might be right. You might be right. Now, in my world, the odds of them being right are really teeny tiny, but I don't have to tell them that.
The sentence is going.
The sentence is true. There we go. You might be right. 4 words that when you could say those to other people, when they hand you their BS, their belief system, when they hand you what they believe is reality, instead of trying to pull them into your reality, just acknowledge theirs. You might be right. And then decide if you like their reality more than you like your reality. Odds are your reality is right for you. And their reality is right for them. And it's possible. And this is what most people don't know. And what I firmly believe and have proven over and over again to myself is that multiple realities can coexist. There are a lot of movies about this right now, starting with The Secret and the oh my God. I mean, the movies are numerous. We should write a whole movie list. Yeah.
It's true. Yeah. It's hard to understand. I think a lot of us grow up in a linear thinking kind of way of their
one truth is
reality, and we all have to clear our lens to see that one reality that is true. And it can be very scary to think that there's relativism in truth. But I've always, I don't know, I can't say always. I was very rigid as a child, teenager, like black and white, right and wrong, dividing everything up. And I had an experience of interacting with people whose life experience was very different from mine. And it just broke that apart permanently. And now I feel like all I can see everywhere is the shades of gray. Never anything is like a clear black and white for me anymore.
There's good and there's bad in all of it. And now I'm curious, what were some of the experiences that had you challenge this black and white thinking?
I grew up in a religious cult. So it was conservative and very rigid, rules-based. And one of the common ways that people are kept in cults is not with threats, but with the message that everybody else is missing something.
We're special.
Yeah.
We're more evolved.
You have this answer. You have the real truth. And those poor, sad people who have never heard this real truth, you wouldn't want to be like them. So if you drop out, you're a huge failure, and you're turning your back on God, and you're turning your back on the real truth. And why would you do that? And so I was very conditioned to think that the people who didn't behave by these very strict rules were miserable, and that they were living terrible lives, and to feel sorry for them. So I ended up being able to go to college. It's a very complex story, but I tried to have an arranged marriage when I was 18, and nobody wanted me, which was devastating at the time. But in a way, this also is a reflection of different realities, because how you take something is the reality.
Mhm.
So at the time, devastated. Looking back at it, thank goodness, like this was a blessing. I could not see that perspective back then, and now I can because I have an awesome husband and I've grown a lot in life. But basically, that set me on a different path because I got rejected. And I went to college and I met people of all different religions and sexualities and life experiences. And it just,
You
they,
got a broader perspective on
and I
how
could
the
see how
world
they are
works.
communicating with the source and with God in their way, that I did not have the exclusive connection to it. So I'm
Yeah.
grateful for all those experiences.
Well, you just shared something really amazing, Carolyn. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Because in that environment, you were told who you were. You didn't figure it out, you were told. In that environment, you were told how the world works from their perspective. And you were told who you could be in the world, which was the bride in an arranged marriage. And when your experience didn't match their reality, you ended up with the ability to go to college and to start to observe that who you are is now a college student versus a wife. How the world works is not just one way within the community you were raised in, but it works all of these different ways from all these people you got to be around. And who you could be in the world opened up. And I appreciate the fact that you went from devastation to gratitude. Many, many, many people live in the devastation when what they have been trained to accept as important doesn't come about and they get stuck there. And Carolyn, one of the greatest gifts you bring to the world is the fact that you have lived through not getting stuck in someone else's definition of how the world works.
And I do have to say, I did get stuck for a long time. I got stuck for many years fighting reality that I was not ever meant to be that person that they showed me growing up. And I wanted to be so badly because that was how you honor God. That's how you get to nirvana. That's the answer. And so even though I was never a good fit for that, I wanted it so badly and I tried so hard and I failed over and over and over again. It was so hard. And I spent my whole 20s trying to force myself back into that mold. So it was a very long process to be able to recognize that I wasn't supposed to be that person.
Your comfort zone, just good enough that you weren't hungry and just bad enough that you weren't happy. That's a great example of that, Carolyn. Thank you.
I am an action taker, so I think when I see that I'm not happy, I'm all about like, how am I going to fix it? Got to get in there and fix it, fix. So maybe that was helpful in a way because it kept me from sinking into like, I guess it's good enough. So I kept fighting. I mean, first I was fighting to get back there, but once I realized I was able to fight forward, and it's been such a wild ride to become an entrepreneur, going from somebody who was raised to be a housewife and to, using a washing machine is laziness. Like, you got to hand wash that stuff. You got to cook from scratch or you're dishonoring your family. And now I'm like the breadwinner of my family. Who could have expected?
All right. So there's a company that discovered something that you just said so very eloquently. So I'm just going to, is it okay if I share this? They created a pancake mix that all a woman had to do was add water, and nobody bought it. And when they changed the formula to where a woman had to not just add water, but she also had to add an egg, they bought it. And it's been around ever since. Because we have this need to see ourselves as doing something that fits that mold that we're raised with, that I'm a good mom if I put this much effort in, and I'm not a good mom if I don't put this much effort in. We have all of these rules from, well, I call them ballparks. We have all of these rules that we inherited from other people's ballparks that we don't even know. But yeah, guess what? This is a true story. When that pancake mix, you just put water in, no woman bought it. Because and then when they realized, oh, wait a minute, they need to do more, they made it where you put it in an egg, it's still on the market. And now we're talking 40 years.
I've always wondered why people buy pancake mix, because I'm like, this is just the flour and the baking soda. Like, what? Where's the convenience of this? So now I understand.
It's about perception. When they first put it on the market, it was the flour, the baking soda, the egg. It had everything in it, and all we had to do was add water. We didn't even have to add milk. For those of us who like to camp, this was ideal. For everybody else, they didn't market it to people who were campers. They were trying to mass market it, and the mass market of women at that day and age needed to do more to feel like that they measure their own flour and baking soda and eggs and milk, and they would just do the whole thing, because you're right, there's not that much difference. So they found the sweet spot.
Yeah, just enough ingredients, but you still
Yep.
feel like you're productive and you're doing your job.
Yep.
Oh,
So
boy.
Madison Avenue and baking companies have it more dialed in than we do as individuals, but we can learn from them. And so my big message in the world is stop arguing with the reality of how your brain was programmed and decide to ask the question, how do I work with the meanings I've already assigned about who I am, how the world works, and who I can be in the world? How do I work with those meanings, those belief systems? I call it your BS, your belief systems. How do you work with your own belief systems to shift them incrementally in the direction of the life that you want to create? And that's the most powerful question I've got this week. How do you stop arguing with reality? You ask the question about your BS, about your belief systems, and the actions you can take without having to rewrite the whole code, because that's a hot mess. But what are the tiny bits of software that you can tweak that will allow you to take a different action, which, by the way, in human terms, is the only way to get a different result. We don't get a different result by having a different thought. We don't get a different result by having a different emotion. Just ask people who've meditated on winning the lottery for decades. We don't get a different result. The cosmic joke is when the person said, but I thought about this, and God said, did you buy a ticket? Yeah. We only get a different result when we take a different action. And that's where reality truly bites. You have to change what you do, not just how you feel or what you think, to get a different result. And I'm a big fan of different results. So
we should wrap up, but if people want to connect with you further and hear more about what you do, what is a good place for them to go?
JackieSimmons.com. We finally just decided to put everything in one place, with the exception of the Teen Suicide Prevention Society work. And that's we made a shortcut.
Oh, excellent.
TSPS, the acronym for Teen Suicide Prevention Society, stands for what? Teaspoons. So teaspoons.org. And there they can connect. They can watch the TEDx talk. They can get involved with the talk that saves lives and emotional cage fighting, which we're intending to go viral. Oh, you like that?
You have the best phrases in the world. It is so phenomenal. Well, if you want it to go viral, then I'll have to go look and find it and start sharing it.
All right. Emotional cage fighting. This is about inviting your friends into the cage and not letting them out until you've had the talk that saves lives. It's a neuroscience-based talk. It's only 4 questions, and you just might save a life or 2.
Okay, so this is the advice we're giving out. You put your friends in a cage and you don't let them out. Okay, we got it.
Until you've had the talk that saves lives. Nice try, Carolyn. But isn't that what our families did? They tried to put us in a cage of their belief systems, and they weren't going to let us out because they thought if they let us out, we would die.
Yeah, it's like you said, it comes from love. I can definitely see where it comes from, a desire to protect.
Mm-hmm. And this is the reality. And now you've learned the magic words, which is you might be right. You might be right. When somebody hands you their limiting belief, when somebody shares their BS with you, you could just say, you might be right. Their brain can't argue. And what does that mean? You can now change the topic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very not defensive reaction. It doesn't escalate things. I really like that.
Right. They're not getting any sparks. That's exactly what it's designed to, is prevent the confrontation, the conflict. And when you change topics, the easiest way to change the topic is ask them about their lives. What are you excited about today? What happened? Who did you engage with? How did you help the world? Anything about them will get them to talk. Why? Because the one thing we want more than anything else is to talk about ourselves. So thank you for letting me talk about myself and my world, Carolyn.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. All right, we'll wrap up there.